Where did the gender wage gap come from? Research says it's from women taking less value jobs, and from women taking time away from paid work to do unpaid family work. It's not correctly described. It's not a wage gap, it's a total earnings gap caused by a combination of social factors, lifestyle choices and discrimination. People who argue that it's unfair focus on the discrimination angle. People who argue there's no actual wage gap focus on the lifestyle choices. The reality is somewhere in between and not something that can be generalized or oversimplified. Women tend to take lower paying jobs, work fewer hours, less commonly take, or aren't given, senior roles. Women take time off to raise children. All these things reduce their average overall earnings despite most places having laws that prevent discrimination. Conversely, men tend to hold most of the highest paying positions. Most billionaires are men. Men don't usually take extended leave to raise children. They get overtime and danger money for risking their lives, etc. Men earn more over their life because they take fewer breaks and hold higher paying jobs. TLDR, averages are misleading and using them to push either agenda is misleading. I keep hearing this statement. Women earn 77 cents to every dollar a man makes. Women make less money to do the exact same job. Something along those lines. Gender wage gaps are calculated by taking the average, or median, female pay divided by the average male pay. It does not differentiate for same job level education, etc., so the second part of the sentence, asterisk to do the exact same job asterisk, is not accurate based on the statistic. Greater than I've worked only in the finance field and I've had a few senior roles for a couple years now. I've been involved in the recruiting process for grads, junior analysts, associates, etc., and I've never actually witnessed this in the workplace. Everyone who has the same position and does the same amount of work earns the same amount of money. I've actually never seen a woman making less to perform the exact same job before. Greater than I'm just curious as to where this statement came from. Are there other working fields where it rings true? Again, I've only worked in finance, so I can only speak about that field. Most companies do pay male and females the same on a like-for-like basis, same job level education, etc., as it would be illegal to discriminate based on gender. In industries with a large gender pay gap, e.g. finance, the wage gap is generally a result of hiring more males in senior and high-paying roles. For a non-fixed salary position, times when folks negotiate a wage, men tend to do better in those situations, and in a historical sense women tended to be paid less because there was the assumption that they weren't there to make a full living for the house like her husband would have been. Men succeed and fail more spectacularly. They are overrepresented in both positions of power and in prisons, homeless shelters. It may have something to do with risk tolerance. Environmental engineering. I found out the first offer they gave me for my entry-level position, I denied it and requested higher, which they did, was the same salary they paid the junior year of his bachelor's degree intern. There's two things going on. First, and the most common, it's not about women and men doing the same job, but that female jobs are paid worse than male jobs, and not so much because the jobs itself are seen as easier jobs, but that because they are jobs that have been regarded as female jobs, then they are paid less. It also has to do with the fact that since women are still taking on most of the domestic and children work, we tend to take on less responsibility, so in the end, they are comparing how much money all women make versus how much money all men make. And turns out women make less money overall. But there's also another thing going on, is that sometimes companies allow for salary negotiation, or that when someone wants to leave the comp pay and they want that person to stay, they offer better conditions, which many times are just a higher salary. Well, it's known that since women are seen as aggressive for being assertive, and that penalizes us, we're not used to this kind of negotiations nor feel empowered to ask for raises, and even if we do, they are lower than what many men would ask. This leads to men and women doing the same role, but disparity on their salaries, and it just happens that usually it's men benefiting more than women in these cases. The wage gap is presented as a myth. Any differences are largely due to free choice. Statistics, always a double-edged sword. Accounting for level, company and function, the gender pay gap goes from 15% to 3% here in Germany, source Korn Ferry 2016. 3% is still not fair, but far less of a concerning issue than a 15%. In my company we tend to pay women higher than men. That is because it's very hard to find female software engineers and there is fierce competition between companies for them. What that means is there must still be some bad companies out there underpaying women to keep the difference negative overall. Unconscious bias of line managers, plus women tend to take more time away work to be at home with the kids, which in return slows down their career development. Men are also more likely to be demanding and negotiate their salaries better. It's absolutely true, there are loads of studies on it. In the UK, companies over a certain size submit data about wage and gender and, depending on the sector, there's a clear gap in pay by gender. However, this is also likely skewed by the fact that senior or higher paid positions also typically tend to be held by men. https://gender-pay-gap.service.gov.uk/ https://gender-pay-gap.service.gov.uk/. At the Bank Santander, for instance, women earn 71p for every £1 men earn. https://gender-pay-gap.service.gov.uk/employer report/UI2CWGML/2023. https://gender-pay-gap.service.gov.uk/employer report/UI2CWGML/2023. When comparing mean average hourly pay, women's mean hourly pay is 27.1% lower than men's. However, I have seen a few companies, typically charities, which have more even pay gaps, or women may even earn more. If you compare across similar roles in an individual organization, you may likely a smaller gender gap. Once you compare across an industry, or include those where women dominate, service industries, for instance, gaps become more apparent, typically because they tend to be lower paid positions. And, as others have mentioned, the more general idea of lower wages for women is that a lot of the work done by women and men in the home is essential yet unpaid, and reduces or even removes earning power in later life, caring, raising a family, cleaning. It's from field selection, associated bonuses and departure from the workspace for family societal commitments. It's a very real thing, but people seem to apply it in the most basic way if people literally getting paid less for the same job, etc. Which isn't the correct way to frame it. There are many factors which play into the gender wage gap. The main factor is having a child, and traditionally women would fill the caregiver role. This puts their career on hold for the better part of 20 years. When they go back to work they will earn significantly less. Another aspect is psychological. Women will almost never ask for a raise. There is certainly a discrimination issue as well. It's been a while since I studied this kind of thing, but these are just some of the main reasons why there is a gender wage gap. I see that most commentators here are incorrect about this, which is not too surprising. Even after adjusting the pay gap, which many commentators here assume has not been done in studies, have found that there is indeed a pay gap. See this for example.
https://journals.lw.com/hcmrjour/abstract/2021/07000/the/underscore gender/underscore pay/_a/systematic.11.aspects
https://journals.lwww.com/hcmrjour.a/slash/abstract/2021/07000/the_gender_aspects. So saying that it is because women take jobs that pay less or that it does not exist after controlling for different factors is just false and the opposite of what a lot of research has shown. People have also seen the famous discussion between Jordan Peterson and Cathy Newman. Funny thing about that video, Jordan Peterson is wrong. Unlearning Economics made a great video about it which you can see here. https://www.youtube.com/watchquestion v=lkc_8fd6pgc&t=3969s https://www.youtube.com/watchquestion v=lkc_8fd6pgc&t=3969s. That video is also applicable to most commentators. So yeah, most of you do not know what the fuck you are talking about. Not trying to be an ass, but if women are making 77 cents on the dollar to men, wouldn't companies actively look to hire mostly women to keep their earnings high and cost of labor low? More objective and bigger data sets in your experience. You're fortunate to work in well-managed places. I've had finance colleagues show me the opposite, as they encouraged me to quit. A persistent gendered pay gap exists even when accounting for occupation, education, and experience. Most of the total pay gap between genders can be explained away by those factors, but there is still je ne sais quoi that has a suppressive effect on how much women earn doing the same work in the same position with the same education and the same work history. Can't tell you what it is though. Nobody's ever figured it out. It didn't. Been debunked a long time. Statistics and culture? Centuries of misogyny.